What if we could help you understand the value of your digital legacy? I'd like to welcome Richard to the Design Your Legacy podcast this lovely Friday. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
It's my pleasure to host you. So let's dive in with a little bit about your background to break the ice with the listeners and the viewers.
Sure. Well, I fell in love with the internet at a very early age. When I was 14, I heard about the internet, and I thought that, maybe this is something that was going to change the world for the better. So I tried to get online. And unfortunately, where I lived in Northeast Ohio in 1994, it was a long distance phone call to get online onto the internet. So I'm in high school spending all my money, my lunch money, trying to get on the internet. And my solution to that ultimately was I founded one of the first internet service providers in Northeast Ohio. I said, there's got to be a way to get myself and my friends online to solve this problem for ourselves. And ultimately, was able to solve that problem for myself, my friends, and thousands of my closest friends in Northeast Ohio. And that was a very successful venture. And I think I was right. The internet has changed the world. There may be quibbles on whether or not it's changed it for the better, but I do think that the internet has changed the world. And that's really what got me started with technology. From that point forward, though, I've been involved in a variety of internet and technology companies, both as founder or as an executive and a software engineer. And just fast forwarding to the present, when my son was born a year and a half ago, my wife and I decided to revisit our estate plans. We had first done our estate plans when our first children were born about 10 years ago. And we thought maybe this was a good time to revisit them. So we dusted them off. We started looking at what was our legacy planning going to look like. And we were very surprised to see that when it comes to the internet world, our digital lives, and for me, this is obviously so central to who I am. What we found was that it was a little inadequate. There are not a lot of good options to help folks really plan for their digital legacy. And I thought, that's really interesting. It's a problem that I have. Maybe I could solve it for myself, just like
Yeah.
that service provider. So I set off on that mission to try to solve this problem for myself and for my friends. And wouldn't you know it, I found that 100 million of my closest adult friends in the United States may have the same problem.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for sharing the context. I just want to circle back for a moment. So you've got 25 years of experience, whether you're wearing the engineering hat and or working with startups or major tech firms. And so this was kind of almost by accident, but there's a lot of inventions I think that come about by accident. There's just a practical need, and then somebody goes forward and they think, well, how can I solve this? One of the things we also talked about in our preamble was, this idea of kind of like sometimes we think we can live forever. And yet, if we don't take that step back and see the bigger picture and plan, then that investment is missing. And I think, like you had said, people these days, it's a different world than our parents. I mean, there's cryptocurrencies that you're going to speak more into in a moment. There's social media profiles. There's passwords to probably 50 to 100 different accounts for the typical, I want to say, millennial, Gen Z, Gen Y. I mean, people these days, I mean, good grief. I mean, if they lose a password, it's a big deal. But imagine if that person becomes MAI. How do you then build something in a smart way? So, how did you first tackle this when you looked at the drawing board?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really big question and a big problem. And actually, people are now approaching 200 online accounts
Mm,
on average, and that's likely only going to continue to grow. And I think one of the things that really struck me as I answer your question is, when my grandparents passed away about 10 years ago, they handed me a box of photos, with like the stories on them. And so that was how our family history was passed down. And I have to say, I don't have that box of photos from
what
my
happened to them?
my children. No, no. I have the box of photos from my grandparents,
Okay, okay.
but I don't have that box of photos to hand to my children of
Yeah,
my life and
that's organized.
that's organized and or really anything. And it occurred to me a year and a half ago. Now I've taken care of this now, but it occurred to me, if I were to pass away without giving someone my passwords, those photos could be lost forever. And, I think when we start talking about our legacy, it's really interesting because a lot of folks rightfully focus on the financial elements. Obviously, cryptocurrency is a big deal. People have invested hundreds of millions and have lost hundreds of millions in crypto. But for some of us, and for actually a lot of people, sometimes it's the things without that monetary value that really matter. And what do you do? What will your children do? What will my children do if they lose a generation of photos because I didn't make the right arrangements? So when we set out to build this thing, we realized this was a tricky problem. There's not an easy answer, which is probably why this really didn't exist before we built it. Because there's a really interesting problem that happens when you start doing this. You
Yeah,
think,
I just want to interrupt for 1 second. And I think what you're speaking to is identity. It's like, well, how do you do life? And even if it's like a century goes by, I think I've shared quite a few times on prior podcasts that I had a grandfather a century ago, and he was a successful insurance broker, multiple homes, multiple cars. And I was always curious, well, how did he do life? And I think a part of it, the reason he didn't write it down or organize things beyond photo albums was he thought, number one, nobody would be interested in hearing it a century later. But number two, there wasn't that support network. And I think now you're building a platform. So please go ahead.
yeah, and the internet is our platform. So thankfully, I don't have to build the internet. But the question of how do you transfer your passwords or your crypto keys when you pass away? How do you do that? It actually is a really interesting question, and a really hard technical problem to solve if you want to do it right. But when we talk about our legacy, how do we want to be remembered in 100 years on the internet with so much of our lives being lived online? If we don't do anything, then we're pretty much leaving it up to Google to determine what results to respond. Let's say my great grandkids want to look up what the old man, did with his life. They go to Google, they search my name. If I haven't made advance arrangements, then it's up to Google to maintain my legacy. And I like Google, I use it every day, but I think that as the internet generations have aged and are aging, and most of our lives are being spent online, that becomes a really interesting question that I think people should think about, which is, how will I be remembered 100 years on the internet where I'm spending most of my life?
Yes. One of the things you've shared previously is that there's both money as well as memories that need to get inventoried. So yes, there's the practical aspects of the cryptocurrency keys. And that, again, could be a foreign language to some people that might not invest in cryptocurrencies, but those who do, you do kind of have to learn a whole new language because it's a new playing field. It's a whole new baseline these days. So let's say that somebody comes to you and they'd say, Richard, I'd like to organize my digital assets. Where would you start them?
So the first thing to do is to start with an inventory and just get a sense of what they have and what they care about. Because of those 200 accounts, while technically I might personally want all of them closed down after I pass away, there's probably 5 or 10 that are the most important. But starting with an inventory of what you have now is definitely the most important part of this process. And then the second thing is determining what you want your legacy to be. Actually, I think you could probably argue that might be the most important thing. When I spoke with my dad about this the first time that I started launching the business, he said, Richard, I don't want people to find me on the internet. I just want you to clean me off of the internet. That's a valid goal, right?
That sounds like my parents.
Okay, like that's not the choice I would have made, but that's a completely valid goal. And if you don't have that goal in mind, thinking about what your internet or your digital legacy is, then having an inventory is important. But then it's like, well, what do I do next for step 3, which is determining what to have done with all that stuff? Do I give my Gmail account to my spouse? Do I liquidate my crypto and transfer it to my estate? Do I continue paying for that domain name, richardzack.com, right? Like, what do I actually do? Can only be determined if we know what our goals are. So the inventory is super critical, but actually probably just talk myself into actually having a knowledge of what we want to do with that is
Yeah.
important. And obviously that involves thinking about death and what our
Well,
legacy.
being realistic that we're not going to live forever. And I think that sometimes when we go out into the world of commercial commerce, there's this idea that sold to us that we're just going to live forever. We're going to be young forever. So I just want to circle back for a moment to the inventory. Digital assets, that inventory can include the cryptocurrency you mentioned, email, all the different types of emails account, could be that Hotmail account from college, for instance, social media profiles, if you do participate in social media, web domains, you just mentioned richardzack.com. So if somebody does have one or 30 web domains these days. And then you had also mentioned images, and that's those photos, whether it's in that shoebox or it's from the iPhone, et cetera.
Mhm.
So it's, I think, what you call digital asset estate planning.
Yeah. Yeah, there's actually 12 categories and you hit, I think, most of them. Um, but yeah, it's so complicated out there. There is a lot. But I think you hit the big ones.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things you also said to me is that this is now a growing niche because many people spend, gosh, 10 hours a day on their blue screen. It's how they communicate with other people. It's become such a big part of lifestyle, and it's going to continue to stay a part of people's lifestyle. So, in that void, I mean, I work in that coaching capacity where there's that need for emotional intelligence conversations, emotional governance, family governance, those types of that area. But I think you looked out into the playing field and you said, where is the support when it comes to organizing the data? And I think you've spent much time in the last year or two even chatting with estate planners. So say more.
Absolutely. So we started just as a digital executor for consumers, and what that means is someone who can take care of their digital wishes after they pass away. In working with consumers on that over the last year, we mapped out all of the different processes and procedures from thousands of different online providers to make sure that we could really deliver that service effectively. And what we found, though, is that when it comes to uh, a complete estate plan, one of the best ways to make sure you do that is to work directly with an estate planner or a financial planner, or both. And in that process, we found that that digital assets were oftentimes being overlooked. And part of the reason being a lot of them are don't have monetary value, and part of the reason being a lot of people just um, don't know where to start.
Yeah. I want to read out a couple of the other categories in a recent article that you had published. This service online, this product also covers bank accounts, investment accounts, retirement funds, real estate, etc. And one of the questions you had posed is, why does any of this matter? And you wrote, unlike traditional assets, digital holdings require a unique set of strategies and tools to ensure they are securely accounted for, accessed, and transferred upon death. And between unclaimed digital assets, privacy concerns with online accounts, security breaches, which is huge these days, and other potential liabilities, there's simply too much at stake to ignore digital estates or take lightly this growing challenge. So I know that one of your goals is to make this accessible to the middle class. So there are services out there that are for the ultra high net worth.
Mhm.
So I find that very interesting because it's an invitation for somebody to, even if they're not rich, to say your memories are rich.
We all have a legacy to protect, all of us. And having tools that are available to everyone, I think, is very important. So, you know, 90+% of us have Facebook accounts, but only 30% of us own crypto. So I look at this from the perspective of all digital assets for all people are important. And everyone, I think, deserves to plan a legacy. Now, that's going to look different for different people in different situations, but we built our technology and we built our Eternal Me platform to be accessible to anyone who is trying to plan for and control their digital legacy, including things like their crypto or their Facebook accounts, their email, their data, their airline miles, all the variety of online assets out there. Um, we think should be part of your legacy, at least thought of. There no one is saying you have to be public, you have to put this online. No one's saying you need to do all this, or you have to go one way or another, or your legacy needs to look like this. I think what we're suggesting is that it's worth the question of how do we want Google to remember us?
Yeah, yeah.
What do we want to have happen? And like my dad, maybe the answer is you just want to be wiped offline, or maybe like me, I want Richard.Zack.Memorial to stay online for 1,000 years.
Well, I think what you're pointing to is choice. One of the other facts that you brought up in your article is, according to NordPress, the average person now has 168 personal online accounts. So again, it's a different playing field, and people are sensitive oftentimes of their online reputation. And so, and I think, the tagline to legacy planning is wealth from knowledge. And so that knowledge is what gets passed on. It's what needs to get distilled and organized and defined and looked at. And we got to slow down sometimes, even if it's just an hour a weekend or 2 weekends or something, to look at it. Because, like you had said, your life became a little bit more real when you had your son. Because now all of a sudden there's a set of eyes looking at you as a witness.
Very true. To me, and in this conversation, we talk about digital assets, but what are we really talking about is the first time my son took a step and having that memory forever, right? So, it's easy to say use the word digital assets, but it's the thought behind it. Like you said, that's really important. It's the knowledge behind what it is. That's a really important point. Thank you.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, in terms of protection online, how do you plan to deal with that?
Yeah. So security is obviously a huge perspective on this whole thing. What we've done is effectively built what's called a zero trust environment. And that's a technical way to say that we, as the platform or provider, we never get access to any of your sensitive stuff. That means we don't get your passwords, your crypto keys, anything that could give us access, we don't get. However, we can still ensure that access is safely stored and transferred to your executor, trustee, your beneficiary, fiduciary, whoever you assign. We can still do that without ourselves ever getting access to the keys. I didn't invent this technology, the zero trust system, but we did implement it. And the way that it works primarily is that when you, just a high level view of how it works is when you type in a piece of protected information into our system doesn't save that information. It splits it into parts. It encrypts it. It sends it to cold storage vaults, which means that that data is offline and disconnected from the internet, and it sends it in pieces. So what that means is it's virtually impossible for anyone to get any of those pieces of data at all. And even if they were, they'd have to get all of those different pieces in the correct order to reassemble it, right? So what happens when somebody passes away and we need to recover that data? Well, our system keeps track of exactly where it is. And we have a arrangement with the cold storage providers that upon successful identity verification of the executor or trustee, they'll transfer the pieces back to the executor in the correct order. So, and from the different providers. So again, it's a system where I know it sounds highly complicated. It is a little complicated, but effectively the way it works is your data is securely stored in multiple different offline storage vaults, and it's only accessible when somebody has actually passed away and we've verified the identity of the fiduciary.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. I know there's this idea of like planning your digital assets. A lot of times people plan their will and their health directive and who's going to have the financial power of attorney. But you're right. These days, if the average person has 168 online accounts, it's like that pink elephant in the room that if you don't think about it now or sooner than later, it's just leaving something up to chance. And just like nobody wants to leave their will up to the probate court where the probate court writes it in their favor, not yours. Yeah, I think it's the same thing with digital assets.
Totally. And with crypto, if someone has your crypto keys or your seed phrases, for example, that is really the practical equivalent of them having, a briefcase full of your cash. With that
Yeah.
access, they can get that your money at any time, right? So when we talk to estate planners, most estate planners don't want to hold those keys because there's
Mm.
liability in holding them, right? So let's say you go to an estate planner, you do an estate plan, you do it all properly, you inventory everything, you just, then you get to the end of the process and it's like, well, what do I do with this crypto key? And because if I give it to my spouse, that's like, giving her the access to the cash, and I trust my spouse, but I asked her and she's like, what's crypto? So she doesn't
That's
know
an
what
honest answer.
to do with it, right? If I give that key to anybody else, they could take that cash and do whatever they want with it. So it becomes again, kind of becomes a really interesting question. What do you do with the key? And so having a safe place to put it, that you know is safe, and having a safe place, a safe process to transfer it is really critical. And these services have existed for a few years. Actually, we're not the first to launch something like this, but they're typically only available to high net worth individuals. The crypto companies that are doing this, for example, this secure key transfer, typically, they require a minimum portfolio of around $10 million, like a minimum crypto portfolio of around $10 million. In our case, there is no minimum like that. We've built the system to be accessible for everyone.
A
But
fellow American.
whether you have 50,000 in crypto or 50 million in crypto, you still have the same question. Where do I store those keys?
Yeah. What else would you like to share about this service that you have commenced? I know that your article talked about the risks of overlooked assets, different considerations, asset schedule updates. What else would you like to touch upon, just for the listener, the viewer out there?
There's so much here. I mean, I think that one of the most important things to do, without getting into the very specifics, is to just make sure that your digital legacy is put on par with the rest of your legacy, with your traditional legacy.
Sure, the legal and financial documents and yeah,
When you're
yeah.
doing your legacy planning, because it is now a part of your life, and something has to happen with it. There's a variety of other concerns that I could discuss. What could happen if you don't take advance measures? We've seen some really bad horror stories out there.
Yeah, please tell me one horror story and then one success story.
Yeah, sure. So we one horror story. I'll aggregate to everyone, because even though this did happen to a client of ours, this could happen to anybody. An interesting thing that most people don't realize is that all those data privacy laws out there that protect your data and that protect your reputation and your identity online, those protections all end when you pass away. Most people don't know that, but once
Oh,
you
that's
pass away,
interesting.
you no longer have any right or expectation of privacy. That includes in the digital world. So if you want to protect your identity, your reputation, how Google remembers you, it's really important to close all your online accounts. And that's where it's like, gosh, I have to have somebody log in and close 163 online accounts. If you care about your privacy, you do.
Yeah, yeah.
Because what happened to our client is their data was legally taken and sold and manipulated and used to discredit this person online
After they passed or right at their,
after they passed away.
wow. I know that from a celebrity standpoint, it's like, let's say there's Marilyn Monroe, I'm just throwing a name out. There's her assets while she's living, there's the rights after she passes, if somebody has purchased those rights. So it's interesting how much the landscape has changed. And like you had said, I think that there is an aspect of knowing that the will is in place and the health directive and the financial power of attorney. But then there's, again, this whole other pink elephant in the room that we don't even know where to begin. And so that's why I think these conversations are important because, yeah, if someone is not having these at the local Starbucks, then it's they're just going to get blindsided with the unknown. So thank you for bringing this.
Totally. And totally. And I'm a technologist and internet expert. I've been doing this for more than 25 years, like you said, and I didn't know this until we started working on this. So it's not unreasonable, right, for most people to not realize this, but truly, for privacy, the only way to ensure that your data is not sold and used how you may not want it to be used after you pass away is to actually log into every provider and close those accounts. In order to do that, you have to have a full password record. You have to have a trustee or a fiduciary that knows how to do it. And you have to have thought about this. So, that's one example of just some of these unknown things. And this is new territory, like you said. So it's not, this isn't a question of people doing something wrong. I think it's a question of this is all new for all of us. And we're trying to really make sure that people have all the tools they need to take care of this stuff. As far as
Absolutely. And these days, especially if some websites, they want additional authorization. So they would like to send a 4 or 5 digit code to the cell phone or a 6 digit code to a Hotmail account or your Outlook and so even an individual is going to have all that in a fiduciary capacity.
Totally. And that's effectively going to be the standard going forward for the next several years before we move to even smarter authentication systems. But imagine if you're working with one of the several cell phone providers who, upon notification of death, will terminate the account access and will not give anyone access to the phone without a court order. How do you get into an account?
Yeah, that's like Facebook.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Another horror story. I know you asked for a success story, and I'll give you one. But another horror story on the non-crypto side is one of our clients spent 3 years just trying to get Facebook to turn off their deceased mother's profile. And why does that matter? Well, every year on her birthday, he gets that reminder, and he can't. She didn't set him as a legacy contact. It took him years and a court order just to
Wow.
turn off his deceased mom's Facebook profile, and it shouldn't be that hard. It shouldn't be that
Yeah.
stressful. And it doesn't have to be if you plan in advance.
Wow. This is a golden knowledge. So share a success story if you would.
Absolutely. So one of our first customers was a cancer patient who was diagnosed with an aggressive form of breast cancer, and she had lived most of her life online. She's a millennial, and all of her photos, all of her pictures, her whole life was online, and she was very concerned about what might happen when she passes away with this diagnosis. So I worked very closely with her to identify all of her online accounts, all of her assets, to set her up in our system in the Eternal Me platform. And we were able to get everything organized and planned and give her peace of mind that this would get taken care of before she had to go into her surgery and start her chemotherapy. The victory and the good news is that she came through, and
Good.
she is now back on her feet again, and she's very healthy. And guess what? Now her digital legacy is planned. It's one less thing for her to worry about. It's attached to her estate plan, and the plan is to work with me once a year to keep that thing updated. So we
Good.
consider that a success story because we gave Carrie the peace of mind, one less thing to worry about in that critical time, that she didn't have to worry about these issues. And she reached out because her estate planner didn't cover any of her digital life, and so that's why she brought us on board.
Yeah. I think it's also really important, and I think you're bringing this up right now, is to have that team in place because an estate planner can do only so much within their expertise, and the
Absolutely.
attorney can only do so much, and the CPA can only do so much. So I think the better somebody has their team set in place, the better they will be in this preparation process. So they can again, it's not just personal agency, it's that invitation where they can have that creative influence of choosing the goals and choosing their say in the matter. Yeah, and not just the fine print of that company click here and check mark this box online. Yeah,
Totally. Yeah.
yeah, the terms
That's
and condition box.
right. 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 Right.
So
Wow.
since this is a legacy podcast, what does the word legacy mean to you personally?
It means what happens after.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, it means we're all on this journey. None of us are going to make it out alive.
Yeah.
The rest of the world will continue. So so how are we remembered? What happens next? That's how I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, in that blink of an eye before we see the Egyptian boatman. In 1 to 2 sentences, what would you like your holistic legacy to be?
Um, I want to have made the world a better place, not only for
Okay.
my family and friends, but for everyone.
Yeah, that's lovely. I could imagine, I'm going to ask you about your core values in a moment, but I could imagine service to others. What else?
So service to others, absolutely. I would say I would wrap that probably in my number one core value, which is empathy.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think as a CEO, as a business leader, and as a technologist and as a father and a husband, I am certain that empathy is the number one most important skill in my life, and I believe probably in most lives. That ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes and try to understand their perspective and to care about their perspective. And with all the turmoil going on in the world and in the country, in our own lives, in our own families, and in our own hearts, empathy is my number one core value. And I think service to others, it flows from that. With empathy, comes that desire, I think, to try to help.
Yeah, I think that's great. Thank you for speaking into that. I know that in the business world, oftentimes individuals with narcissistic personality disorder prevail and rise to the top. And in Los Angeles, it's like 1 out of every 4 people are narcissistic. It's like, whew. So to hear that you are embracing a value around empathy, especially because you're in a leadership position, yeah, that's very cool. And I hope that yeah, your son and your wife and the circle of people around you get to see this video both this year, but also maybe in 10 years from now.
Hopefully 100 years from now and 1,000 years from now.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. And absolutely. And I would say my second core value is related. It's integrity.
Okay.
And um, I think I think integrity is what really separates us from, the wild out there, the wild at large, and that's doing what you say you're going to do. It can be so hard. Honesty and integrity, it can be so hard, and yet I think it's critical to everything. And I do think there are a new generation of business leaders who believe in these values too. I don't think I'm the
That are
only.
value based.
Yeah, I don't think
Yeah.
I'm the only one. And I know for sure that at the big level, there are a lot of executives who feel the same way. Um, so it's a really interesting sea change, and I wonder how much the internet was involved in that. But I guess we'll find that out.
Yeah. Well, I think a values-based CEOs and executives are needed more than ever to not compromise. But I also see it from coming from the ground up. So it might not necessarily just be the Fortune 100 and 500 executives that have the influence. It's those who own small and medium-sized businesses that are
Totally,
changing the landscape with their products and services. Yeah. Yeah.
totally,
Very
totally.
cool. So empathy, integrity, service to others, anything else?
Hard work.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh, I uh, uh, I believe in it. I like it. Whether it's working hard for my family or working hard for my business or working hard for my customers or working hard for myself. I think the best things come when we try really hard. And
Yeah.
I think that's one of the most important values that most that most leaders have, and it's really important to me.
Very cool. Very cool. If you were to set aside a weekend or two, a month to design your hardcover coffee table book in the next 6 to 12 months, what images, stories, life lessons would fill its pages?
So I'm working on 2 books at the moment. So
Okay.
you
Okay.
want to exclude those?
Include them, but also share your thoughts about this hardcover coffee table book, whether it's for your office or your home living room.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll be timeless.
Yeah, no. So I'm working on 2 books right now. One is a practical guide to planning your digital estate, and
Okay.
it's just really important for people to know that you can do this and that it's not that hard if you know what to do.
Yeah, that's
So,
good.
that's trying to get out to just everybody. The second book I'm working on is a more legal work on the legal intricacies of working with digital assets, and I'm partnering with a great attorney on that one. So that's more targeted for estate planners who need to know like the intricacies of all the legal casework that's happened with digital assets. So that's going to be really interesting. But to your point, I think those are more practical. Those are more
Yeah, well, I think they're needed. I think people do, and to use a metaphor, I think people do need to have the VCR instructions
yeah,
because you can present them with an idea, but if they don't know in a manual how to go from point A to point Z, they won't take the effort because confused people do nothing. So you have to kind of show them, kind of like IKEA furniture, put this here and associate this and assemble this there, and then you have a beautiful furniture bookshelf at the end.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think if I wanted to dream a little bit and say, what book would I love to write that'll be on my coffee table that, is significant and meaningful, I think it would be um, probably something to do with uh, how to leverage empathy and integrity in a leadership.
Mm.
And I really think that those two uh, are often overlooked. And I think they're two of the most powerful leadership traits. So I'd love to talk more about that and why I think that. But I think that's where my hardcover book would on my coffee table would be.
I think that's brilliant. And I think that's something that is timeless to pass on. Because again, 50 or 100 years from now, what was father or grandfather Richard like?
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
I think it also speaks to, again, like how does somebody do life? And I think a part of like their digital asset speaks to that. Like what websites do they visit? What websites were important to them? Were they buying their clothes from J. Crew? You know, how again, in terms of identity, how did they do life and deal with, lifestyle challenges and all of it? Yeah.
Totally. And how do you present yourself online, or do you present yourself online? Was it all personal? Was it professional? How involved were you with your family online? There's so much, and it's just gonna keep going. The
Yeah.
internet's keeping on, and more of us are using it, and it's getting more and more high tech and more embedded in our lives.
So, is there anything else you'd like to share about your company and or the subject of legacy before I ask you a good website for someone to find those future books?
Yeah, thank you. No, just we're here to serve, and whether it means working directly with a consumer to help with their digital estate, or working with estate planners to make sure their clients are using the latest tools to do this, we're here to help, and we would love to do so.
Yeah, thank you. That's brilliant. Before I read out my closing paragraph, I just want to thank you for being a guest on today's show. One of the things we chatted about in our preamble was you had said to me, I love building things and solving problems. So I think this is an alignment both with the marketplace as well as the gifts and the values and the talents that you bring forward. And also, you had said that it's important to update estate plans. Sometimes people just do it 10 years or every 10 years, every decade. But given today's digital pace of technology and data and things that were, websites were opening up, whether it's crypto related or other, you know, virtual reasons. I think that this is a timely conversation to understand that this is an area of personal agency. We might have not thought so a decade or so ago, but I remember a decade or two ago, people made a comment that parkplace.com would be worth more than the physical Park Place just to get that domain. And so it's a different baseline these days and will continue to evolve in the future. So thank you for making this accessible to the middle class so that they too can pass on their knowledge to the next generations.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. In closing, I'm Angelina Carleton, the hostess of the Design Your Legacy podcast, as well as the founder of Legacy Planning, a boutique advisory firm based out of Beverly Hills, California, but international in those I coach and consult. I hope to dive deep into subjects that can help a person define, develop, and execute their legacy, and continue to scour the landscape for those who can be great resources to every dimension of your legacy. For many listeners, there can never be enough education and preparation in the moot or mo around your castle. Whether you find yourself with new wealth or generational wealth, may the content on this channel be an anchor in any storms ahead. We do our best to provide original content for your intellectual and emotional curiosity. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you're tuning in on SoundCloud, Spotify, or Apple Podcast, please remember to rate and review, share with your family and friends. If you enjoyed today's episode in particular, send an email to either Richard or myself to share your thoughts. So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, Richard, for speaking into your legacy.
Thank you very much.